chat. That's also where you can ask questions throughout tonight's program, and we will try to answer them during the last half of the program. This will be recorded and we'll post it on the Casa de Oro Alliance website and social media in case you want to share it with friends and neighbors in the future. So we anticipate that tonight's program will last approximately 1 hour, but we might go a little longer if there are a lot of questions. So let's start our General Assembly with a message from the Casa de Oro Alliance President, Mr. Bob Yaris.
Good evening and greetings. My name is Bob Yaris, President of the Casa de Oro Alliance. Thank you for joining us this evening. Tonight, the Alliance has assembled a learned panel of committed volunteers and county representatives to enlighten us on the award and progress of the $500,000 Sandag grant to purchase and develop a specific plan and exciting new design guidelines to revitalize Casa de Oro. I would first like to share with you several recent exciting accomplishments the Alliance is proud to announce. If you have not heard as yet, the San Diego County Board of Supervisors unanimously agreed to lease the required land from the La Mesa Spring Valley School District behind the Spring Valley Academy to build a 13,000 square foot new library and conference center. Thanks to retiring Supervisor Diane Jacob, this 5-year project was finally approved. Further discussions with the county, the East County Boys and Girls Club executive, and several local potential donors to build a Boys and Girls Club or teen center adjacent to the library are moving forward. The County Board of Supervisors also recently awarded the Alliance a neighborhood reinvestment grant in excess of $100,000 to fund the redevelopment of the entrance to Casa de Oro on the corner of Kenwood and Campo Roads. As a result, this funding will also include and allow the Alliance to purchase and hang banners along Campo Road, purchase and install large potted plants in multiple locations along Campo Road, as well as design and purchase a new Welcome to Casa de Oro monument sign on Kenwood Drive. If you would like to contribute to any of these exciting projects, we have launched a GoFundMe campaign on our Facebook page and would welcome any and all of your contributions. Finally, as we continue to work closely with the Rancho San Diego Sheriff's Department, we remain optimistic all the remaining marijuana dispensaries in Casa de Oro will be closed by year end. We have ongoing communication with the lieutenant overseeing this effort, and he asked that we remain patient as they pursue further criminalization of these business operators and curtail further proliferation of these businesses in Casa de Oro. And finally, we are always looking to add new volunteers to our committees and would welcome your participation. As an example, our beautification committee meets the first Saturday of each month in front of the old Oxbow Inn to clean up Campo Road and adjacent streets. Thanks to their diligence and hard work, I think you would agree, Casa de Oro looks much cleaner. Please follow us on our Facebook page and our website, casadeoroalliance.org. Thank you. With that, I will turn the meeting back over to Lisa Stewart, who will moderate tonight's meeting and introduce our panel.
And here's what we will cover tonight. First, I will introduce our panel, and then Roy Davies will give some background information about the Casa de Oro revitalization. Then Ed Batchelder will talk to us about what is a specific plan. And Eric Lardy will share where the county is at preparing the specific plan, what's next, and how do we stay involved. And then we'll spend the last half of our program with questions and answers and a panel discussion, which will include Wendy Tinsley Becker and Michael Herron. And after that, Michael will wrap up the assembly with meeting dates and committee updates. So throughout the presentation, if you have a question, please type it in the chat and we will bring up those questions during the Q&A and panel discussion. Okay, so who's who on our panel? Well, I will be your moderator tonight, and I've lived in the Casa de Oro area for 23 years, moving here from the Washington, D.C. area. I've been active in the community in a variety of volunteer roles, including PTA and the District Advisory Committee for both the Grossmont Union High School District and the La Mesa Spring Valley School District, Girl Scouts, Relay for Life, and Kiwanis, and I've enjoyed getting to know many of you along the way. I currently serve on the board of directors of the Casa de Oro Alliance, and I co-chair the Alliance's Government Affairs Committee with Michael Herron. So Michael Herron lived his youth in the better days of Casa de Oro during the 60s and 70s, attending our local public schools. After serving in the US Air Force as a computer repair technician and then earning a degree in English, Mike started a family and a long career in information technology, business consulting, and project management. Mike returned to Casa de Oro with his wife, Shelley, and his 3 young children in 1996. Mike will start a new 4-year term in seat 5 of the Valley de Oro Community Planning Group in January. He is a parishioner and active in Santa Sofia Catholic community. Mike volunteers as the treasurer of the Casa de Oro Alliance, as well as co-chairing the Government Affairs Committee with me. Roy Davies has lived in Casa de Oro for 23 years, moving here from Mission Hills in 1997. He serves on the Casa de Oro Alliance's board of directors. Roy is an architect, practicing since 1979, and with an office in La Mesa since 2005. Roy was on the team that developed the Little Italy Visioning Plan back in 1986 and assisted with the Mission Hills Beautification Plan. Ed Batchelder is a 33-plus year Casa de Oro resident and homeowner whose 2 children were raised here and attended Casa de Oro Elementary and Spring Valley Middle Schools. He serves on the Casa de Oro Alliance's board of directors. Ed's educational background is in landscape architecture, and although recently retired, he worked a 30-year career in city planning, including serving as planning manager and deputy planning director for the city of Chula Vista. Ed is a member and former chair of the Landscape Architecture Department Advisory Council, Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. Eric Lardy is the Chief of Advanced Planning for the County of San Diego, part of Planning and Development Services. He has been with the county for 16 years and the Chief of Advanced Planning for the last 2 years. During his time, he has worked on many ordinances, general plans, and land use projects for the county. These include community plans, the general plan, agriculture promotion, and specific zoning ordinance zoning for Ramona, Alpine, and Fallbrook. Ms. Tinsley Becker is an urban planner and architectural historian with a specific focus on historic environments. She is included on the California Council for the Promotion of History's Register of Professional Historians and also maintains professional certification in the American Institute of Certified Planners. Wendy is faculty within San Diego State University's City Planning Graduate Program. She is the founder of the Built Environment Education Program San Diego and is a past chair of the American Planning Association's National Urban Design and Preservation Division. She is a duly elected public official and serves as a member of the County of San Diego Valley de Oro Community Planning Group. Wendy lives in Mount Helix, and she is the founding principal of Urbana Preservation and Planning LLC, a boutique preservation planning firm celebrating its 15th year in business. Phew, that is a lot, and we are so grateful to have you all here tonight. So panelists, thank you for being here tonight and for sharing your expertise, not only tonight, but in all of the ways that you participate in our community. So Roy, I'm going to ask you to share your screen, and I will turn the program over to you to share some background about revitalization in Casa de Oro.
You got it. Here we go. Let's share this. Okay, are we good? Are we sharing?
Yes.
Yes. I see your screen. Yes.
All right.
I'm just going to move this down where I can. Are we still sharing? Okay.
Very good.
Okay, good. So I've got a quick preamble here about where we were, where we've come from, and where we're going to. I'm not in any way saying anything about what the county is doing with our specific plan process. This is more or less just a snapshot of how we got to this and why we think this is necessary. So the county, with assistance from a professional planning firm, MBI, is evaluating our Casa de Oro village and will be developing a specific plan, a roadmap to help with our long-term revitalization vision. Most of what you see here are excerpts from our visioning document, which we use to get county support and funding for the plan. The red boundary on the left will be the approximate study area, and probably Eric will be talking a little bit more about the details of that. This project was spearheaded by the Casa de Oro Alliance, as our perception is that Campo Road corridor was neglected and that it was not the attractive and safe village center that it had been for decades, despite surrounded by very desirable residential neighborhoods. I'm going to flip a slide here. There we go.
Oh, hey,
What happened?
I think what we're seeing is your script and not your slides.
Sorry about, I'm going to move this back.
Okay. There you go.
I'm sorry, bear with me here.
No worries.
Too many screens. Here we go.
Yeah.
Are we back up?
Yes.
Okay, good to go. So MBI is conducting community workshops and collecting important data to fashion a specific plan unique to the revitalization of the Campo Road corridor. Some of you attended that virtual meeting in October. So similar to some of the 1980s La Mesa, El Cajon, Mission Hills, and University Heights neighborhoods, our village has been neglected and some would say blighted, but after thoughtful planning and improvements, those other districts are now very desirable for both business and households alike. Some of those projects implemented a similar specific plan model, while others through amendments to the existing zones. However, the county, for us, will not allow the existing C36 zone to be modified, but will allow a specific plan overlay unique to the Campo Road corridor. MBI will take our vision and put it into the specific plan, organized into these 4 guiding principles. The October presentation of the work in progress is online, so please take a look. I think Dusty's going to put something up on Facebook for us on that. So our larger community today, it has all the traditional village elements. It has 7,000 households. It has elementary schools, middle schools, libraries, post offices, faith centers, a ton of retail, and parks and other, elements that make a community what it is. And sorry, managing my slides here. It is the most convenient and obvious place for our households north and south of the 94 to do our shopping. It is literally a river of commerce in the valley between Dictionary Hill and Mount Helix. That by all accounts should be very profitable to any business there. But it was left behind with newer, more attractive and safer shopping at Avocado, Rancho, and La Mesa. We'd like Campo Road to be successful again. Here's the big picture. The specific plan will help with managing high-risk alcohol sales and pot shops, remove some of the blight, improve the streetscape, add civic amenities like our future library that Bob talked about, new street cans, new bus shelters, event banners, a few successful community projects also spearheaded by the Casa de Oro Alliance. We want to create design guidelines that shape the architecture that we experience from street level and remove some of the chaos, the visual chaos, include some development-friendly regulations that help struggling properties to improve or expand. And Ed will be talking about the mechanics of this specific plan in more detail. How we got here. So over time, Campo Road has become drive-through and not drive-to, in part due to shoppers going elsewhere. It's a downward spiral. Less customers equals less profit, equals deferred maintenance, equals still fewer customers, meaning even less profit, et cetera, leading to where we are today. Properties that simply don't have the income to make any improvements. So some of the current projects that we're dealing with, some of the low-hanging fruit that the Alliance is taking care of, is to help with removing dumpsters, getting the county to help with their deferred maintenance, asking some of the store vacancies to become more attractive, maybe reducing some of the smoke shops, seeing what we can do with any kind of billboard mitigation, which is a tough one. as we move on, we have then the vision that we have was to 4 items: zoning regulations, to get some civic amenities going, some street beautification, and design guidelines. And I'll just read through each of these briefly. So zoning regulations, we want to be aware that there are 2 types of properties in our Campbell Road corridor. There's the western side, which is the larger big box, Albertsons, CVS, the large retail strip across the street. Those are very large lots, which have different zoning concerns than the smaller roadside retail, which is the stuff between basically, I'm sorry, drawing a blank, but you know what I mean, where the car wash is, the vet center is, the
Casa de Oro Boulevard.
Yeah, exactly. And so that was the original development, but they have very different concerns. Those are very small lots. Slide number 9. So some of the zoning regs are, we did some quick case studies about if we went into, say, the strip center where the pawn shop is between Valero and Cerritos. That's this gray area. And we did a quick study of what it would take to redevelop that today to today's current C36 zone, which is what the county is adamant that we should follow. And it would only allow that property owner to develop 1/2 of the rentable space that they currently have. So through no fault of their own, these small property owners now have grandfathered parking, and part of their parking is literally on the sidewalk. They have no landscape, but they do have the largest rentable building on the smallest amount of land. So there is literally no incentive to improve. So looking at what might happen if that same property was to be part of a specific plan, what could happen is that we might have some angled parking on the street. We would get some landscaping. There might be a median down the road. They probably will never achieve the same square footage, at least not a single story, but perhaps they could get the same square footage in a 2-story building. These are things that the specific plan might be able to help us put together. So one of the other elements was amenities in our community, which we are woefully short of. There's no library presence other than in a shopping center. We have no park on the street. We do have a church, but it's sort of hidden behind retail. So what we wanted to suggest was new and improved amenities that will foster a sense of community, regional identity, some activity on the street, health and well-being, chance encounters, and of course, safety above all. Of course, we want a library, and that's on the way. More about that later. We need a community room, a place where you all can meet and share our ideas and ongoing projects. We should have a rec center for our youth and for our elderly and for me. We should have park and pocket parks, places where we can gather and share things. So another idea was street beautification and mobility. Clearly, there's very little beautiful about Campbell Road at the moment. It's nice enough, but it could be enhanced substantially. Street parking and landscape, identify some gateways, enhance crosswalks, some landscape, things like that. Design guidelines was something that would start to control the architecture that we see from street level. Is there any way that we could maybe have some of these property owners in improving their buildings, even improving their facades, just with a coat of paint, some shade elements on the face of their building that draws some sort of thematic scene all the way down the road. There's something going on that makes sense for everybody. And then design guidelines also. The thing with design guidelines was that back in the 80s, the county offered to do design guidelines for every unincorporated community in the county. But for some reason, Casa de Oro, Val de Oro opted out of that program. So to some degree, we're playing catch up. And I think that's probably where we find ourselves now. We're in 2020, and it's still fairly random and chaotic development down on the street, if at all. And we believe that the specific plan would go a long way to pulling the community together, pulling the investors in, getting the property owners on the side of good design where everybody can become profitable, because everybody that lives on the hillsides above Campbell Road would then come back and start doing all their shopping there. That's my presentation. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Roy.
You're welcome.
Ed, you're on.
Okay, great. Just a moment, please.
Okay, all right. And for those who are watching this, we're going to do our question and answer at the very end. So, but you can still type your questions in when they're fresh on your mind. So you can go ahead and do that now in the chat all throughout, and then at the end we'll pick up your questions and do a Q&A. Ed,
So are we ready?
we're ready.
Well, good evening, everyone. While this first screen is up, let me just make a couple of introductory remarks. The portion of the presentation I'll give is intended to provide a layman's overview of what a specific plan is, along with some typical content examples, and to put the specific plan into context with other documents and programs that are going to be necessary to ensure it gets implemented. While it's a technical subject, and you'll begin to realize that, tonight's overview is simply meant to generate more public awareness for you all of what generally to expect and to look for when the actual specific plan documents and other items begin to come out from the county going into the early portion of next year and on throughout the summer. So it's trying to help you understand that all the things that Roy is talking about that need to be put into these documents, how does it happen and what does it look like? So with that, let me go to this first slide. So in California, specific plans, they're basically a form of zoning document that controls development. So they're part of a larger 4-part framework of plans and programs that are really necessary for change to happen in any area. They span from larger and broader land use policy plans, like in this case, the county general plan at the top, which have these very broad land use types and very broad policies. Those are followed in greater detail in area focused provisions such as community plans, specific plans, and zoning. So in our area, we have already adopted something called the Casa de Oro community plan that governs in our area and speaks for the county plan, and the specific plan has to work with that plan. Locally, also, just for your information, a specific plan was adopted. I think Roy showed that over in the Rancho San Diego area in the 1980s. So that's kind of the experience we've had locally with them. Accompanying facility and service master plans, that third item down, that support the land uses that are envisioned in these new plans. They're also necessary, as are various funding and finance mechanisms. So without each of these 4 parts, it doesn't work, and then all 4 are required to be consistent with the others so that they in fact will work together. So as its name implies, a specific plan is more focused in both the area it governs and in the details it provides. So as shown on the screen, it drills down on more detailed goals and objectives and policy statements, detailed land uses, and particular regulations that address local conditions to achieve, in our case, the desired vision for Casa de Oro, as Roy outlined. So that's kind of our guidebook when we go to put this together. Details like how tall buildings can be, how big or bulky they are, how far from the street they can be placed, how much parking is needed, etc., as examples. It's essentially the what can be built and where it can be built. Specific plans or sometimes accompanying document also have design guidelines, Roy mentioned these, and standards that describe how the area should look and how the uses get physically organized and connected to each other. A unique benefit of a specific plan for Casa de Oro is that we can modify our local land use, our zoning, and adopt design requirements without affecting regulations for other unincorporated areas. So that's why the specific plan tool. So regarding zoning, the county has indicated it's going to use what's termed a form-based code. It's a little different than typical zoning like the C36 that Roy mentioned exists today. It focuses on regulating the form, or essentially the size, shape, and the bulk of development and buildings as they relate to their physical surroundings and as they relate to the street and other public space. So normal, typical zoning is more focused on types of land uses and then how those are specifically located and how you kind of appropriately separate them. So form codes are really more urban design focused. They create desirable activated places and settings along streets and public spaces, and they're most effective when you're dealing with multi-story buildings when you have form to work with. So zoning is applied through districts. So this is a sample from a Chula Vista plan, but essentially what we'll see is the C36 will get replaced with some other kind of zoning district. So on this map, you just see some labels, well, those are the names of the districts. So the map shows what district applies and the specific pieces of property that it applies to. Then there's also in a plan, along with that map, is this a table of detailed land uses. So this is done a little bit fuzzy on purpose because we don't want to get you caught up in reading it in detail. What I'd like you to take away is this. There's a gray column on the left, list all the individual land uses, barbershop, bike repair, pizza place, etc. The columns are the different district areas, and then those boxes in there show which of those land uses can either be allowed, it's not allowed, or it's allowed with special conditions. So again, permitted, prohibited, or conditionally permitted. So essentially, that allows us the opportunity to better address uses that have been a past concern, some of the ones Roy mentioned. So again, important, and you'll see this in the plan, and it's kind of how rubber hits the road, so to speak. The other thing that happens in a plan is you'll get guidelines. So they have components regarding site planning standards and other requirements that development has to adhere to, building location and arrangement, amongst a lot of other matters. So this one is a sample from Chula Vista, but it talks about how buildings are supposed to orient to the street, gives you written provisions that are these guides that then have to be followed, and then the county and the planning group can judge whether projects meet by looking at these. There's also usually a component about public amenities in these plans as well. These are features such as parks, plazas, primary pedestrian facilities that connect the land uses together, connect the public spaces, connect to existing schools, and some of those things Roy mentioned, and also how to connect in our case, the core to the adjoining neighborhoods. So you'll have something like that. Roy mentioned design guidelines before, so you absolutely have to have these in a specific plan. They're stated, they essentially control where and how certain types of development can occur. You most often see the results of good guidelines reflected in how an area looks and feels. And frankly, they're fundamental to creating the desired character of an area. If you don't have an organized set, and to what Roy said, you might get kind of a hodgepodge collection of something that may or may not work together. Along with, as part of those guidelines, this is excerpted from Pasadena. They'll have broad provisions, so the guidelines actually occur at a variety of scales. So you see on this diagram, some at the community level, and then they'll go down and have the guidelines get more specific to certain areas like streets, sites, or individual buildings. So this is a pretty common format. Along with this, each of the guidelines usually has a statement, and then it contains illustrative graphics or sample pictures of what we're looking for. Or in some cases, they also include what you don't want. So it can work either way. The guidelines are typically split up into two what's called realms. And this is kind of an important point. Development of a specific plan doesn't happen by itself. Once the provisions for zoning and design guidelines are adopted, it's private development in large part that has to adhere to this. So somebody has to be interested to want to develop a property and build according to the new plan. So you'll have what's called private realm design guidelines, and that simply are those that apply to private development and private property. So here you'll see a variety of topics on this. We may have some similar topics to this based on what Roy has mentioned. Each one of these topics then has an accompanying sheet. It explains what the guideline is, what its intent is, all the provisions related to it, and once again, illustrative drawings or pictures of what you want or don't want. So it's very thorough, and the idea is that it's easy to follow. So in the same here for the public realm, then it repeats the same. The public realm are areas that are controlled in many cases by government because they consist of streets like Campo Road, may just be other public space, common view corridors, those kind of things that would be controlled by other than just one private developer. So here again, a number of these topics that go in the public realm, similar formats, each one, guideline, the intent of it, all the recommendations. So you're able to use this to basically form a checklist for when the county and others actually review development. And if we get all this right, most of these plans also will have an illustrative vision. So I just took this sketch from another plan in Chula Vista, but you'll get something like this that allows you to kind of get a long-term, if it was all built out according to the vision, what it might look like. So in here, the point here would be, as Roy said, if you can think about Campo Road today and then look at this corridor, much more activated, much more pedestrian scaled buildings to the street sectors, okay? And then again, streetscape master plans usually are included. This is that implementation component. There may be underground infrastructure and other things that are also required. So you usually will have these plans. Campo Road will have a streetscape new concept plan prepared as part of this specific plan. And then to implement these plans, and some kind of just about closed last two slides, they don't implement themselves. So in order for the land uses and the development to occur, there are a variety of different funding and finance and other mechanisms that are necessary, implementation tools. So I've listed on the slide the four most common types. The ones at the top, development impact fees and community facilities districts, are usually government instituted, used for larger infrastructure that serves bigger areas or multiple properties. The infrastructure finance districts do a similar thing. They're just a little bit of a different tool. And then there's things like business improvement districts, and these are often much more localized, where let's say a group of property owner or business owners would want to get together and tax themselves, charge a fee in order to accomplish something specific. A lot of times they do these things for things like maintenance and marketing in an area. There's also some other implementation tools that are out there. I think this would go more to when Roy talked about the coat of paint and some of those other like quote low-hanging fruit that short of full redevelopment that folks could do. So again, I'm not suggesting these are specific programs in the county, but these are four types of programs where most agencies have something here that allows individuals an easy access to doing improvements to their properties or businesses. And that concludes my presentation.
All right, thanks so much, Ed. You stop sharing your screen, and then Eric,
Absolutely.
You're up next.
Okay, you should be good.
Oh, yep, there you go.
All right, I think we're good. So thank you, everybody. Excited to be here from the County of San Diego. We're excited to continue to move on with this project and move towards really the real meat and the details of this project. And so I'm going to go through a little bit of what we have done already and a little bit of what we have coming up. So with this, Roy already went into sort of the study area and the purpose, but this is just another map that shows our focus is the commercial corridor on Campo Road and really achieving revitalization. We want to make sure there's a clear vision, goals, and policies, and then include all of that into an implementation plan. This is a little bit on our schedule, and I will turn on my laser pointer. And so we're in here where we're preparing the beginning stage of the draft plan. We're working on community engagement, and then we're going to go into the next year with our community engagement, developing all of the details and information. And then we're going to be having a public review of the draft specific plan in the middle of next year. Concurrent to that, we're going to be working on an environmental review. We're required under the Environmental Quality Act to do a review. And then we're going to be going to the Board of Supervisors, who's the final decision maker for consideration and adoption of this, currently estimated at the beginning of 2022. Throughout that, there's going to be a lot of opportunities for engagement, as well as touch points with both the Alliance, the Casa de Oro Community Planning Group, and then many other groups that are interested in this project. A little bit about the phases of this as well. And so we're in right now what we consider the phase 3 in the community plan outreach. There was a lot of work that went into this. And so first there was what we considered the phase 1, which was assessment and recommendations. We worked with the community and we applied for the grant with the Sandag Smart Growth Incentive Program. The phase 2 was a lot of analysis and reports. It was a market analysis. We did a traffic and parking analysis. We did infrastructure and traffic studies. And then we did higher level visioning. And it was one of our last in-person workshops, but we were able to have a workshop in February and have been conducting information since then. All of this information is available on our website, and we will, the links on our presentation, but I think they're also going to share it in the Facebook chat. There's different ways that we've conducted engagements through this project. We did a walk audit, we did business interviews, we have had community workshops, we attended the fall festival, and so we want to get input in any ways that we can as part of this. We also just recently last month had a workshop via Zoom where we got input on a number of components. And that's really where we got input and got these set guiding principles. And Roy shared these guiding principles in his presentation, but this is really the main crux of our plan, the 4 things that we're going to design our plan around. We're going to be looking at the ceremonial entrances and gateways. So as part of this plan, you have entrances into it coming from Kenwood and coming on the side with Granada. There's a number of options with that to make those more of a gateway. And here's some examples of other communities through either signage or through actual road improvements that construct a different configuration. What the specific plan will do is establish appropriate design regulations and guidance. So it'll take that old C36 zone that's not flexible, and it's a county-wide standard, and design custom zoning that can look at things like lot coverage. It can look at things like setbacks and height and frontage, and really reconfigure. And the theory is that if you have that reconfiguration, it breaks some of those issues that with standards that exist. And then as we design this plan, it's not going to be a right-of-way change, but there's already things that are happening in the community. This will be an over time process as private property owners have investment and change consistent with the new requirements. And then ultimately, we want to look at both the mixture of uses, the mixture of different types of land uses in the community, as well as the infrastructure. And then lastly, there's a number of components that we are looking at on Campo Road itself. So we're looking at a number of different attributes that you've seen in other communities, but focusing on pedestrian and bicycle safety and crossings, sidewalks, looking at the potential for reconfiguring intersections, coordinating a parking strategy both on and off the roads, and then having additional flexibility with that in the component. And so there's a number of things and options that we're developing with our consultant that we're going to be presenting to the community and getting feedback on which options are better, which options are preferred, what types of things does the community want to see. Ed talked about this a little bit, but there's a number of considerations for implementation. It's going to be a long-term plan. Some of the improvements are not necessarily in the county's capital budgets, but if we have a plan, if we have a streetscape plan, it'll make us eligible for potentially future grants from SANDAG or other agencies. And then there could be looking at implementation with respect to some of the districts that Ed talked about, and some development of those. So we're right now in the plan development stage, and we've done the envisioning, we've done a lot of studies and information. Our next step, which we're really excited to do, is a visual preference survey and on alternatives. And so we're busy working with our consultants, Michael Baker International, who are developing visual preference surveys and information where we can show different attributes. And those are the things that will really set the framework for the specific plan, for the design guidelines, and for the streetscape plan. We're looking, and we actually are looking tentatively at December 17th to have a virtual workshop for that guidelines workshop. And then that'll really help us as we take that information back. We'll take it back and we'll start to put it into the draft plan. And then starting 2021 rolling as we design the draft plan, as we have more public input, and as we kind of work in from there. So like I said, we're excited to continue this moving. We're excited to have a lot of community engagement and input. And then this is our project website. So this link has all of the reports that we completed. It's got all of our contact information. Josh Minville is our project manager, and so his email address is here, and he's available for any questions that anyone might have. Let me. There we go. And I do
Okay.
see questions are coming in.
Yes, we do have some questions. So I'm going to start with a question. Once the specific plan gets adopted, will we see immediate change in Casa de Oro? Ed, do you want to take that one first, and Eric also?
Sure. Sure, I'm happy to start with that. I think I'll kind of just piggyback onto Eric's one of Eric's final comments in that slide, that no, these things really don't happen overnight. Large scale changes, as he said, a lot of these areas are privately held, private property in the existing shopping centers or the small parcels Roy mentioned. That requires the cooperation of those folks. So a lot of times, starting early, we usually go after some little bit lower hanging fruit. So as Eric said, things like working on the facility master plans in order to move closer to getting money, in order to implement those plans. These are some of the things that we can be doing. We also had some other activities that the Alliance continues to pursue. We got new bus shelters with MTS. We continue to do the cleanups. And then we're also just successful in getting, and thank you to Diane Jacobs' office, a little over $102,000 to do some interim beautification projects along Campo Road, like banners on the light poles, some additional concrete planter pots with plants in them that are movable. We can at least add some interim landscape, and also some improvements, a plan for improving the gateway at Kenwood and Campo. So those are some things, just a handful of examples of things we can do in the interim until we get larger dollars and bigger plans put together.
Eric, anything else that you want to add to that, or is that good, or any of our other panelists?
I was going to say, I think that covers it. I think good response.
Okay. All right. Anybody else? Do the. Oh,
I just wonder what the time frames that we should be thinking about. Is it, and I just think about this library that just got passed. How long in you guys planners' minds does it take to build a library? I mean, that would be a major change in Casa de Oro. And then once we have that, it's going to be changing our traffic patterns and the way people move around, at least in that part of Casa de Oro. So is there any thoughts on, that would be a big change, and how do we plan around that?
Yeah, so Michael, I think that's a good question. I can speak to what Planning Development Services can do around that. And so we're actually going to be expanding our study area to make sure it includes the location of the library. And so we will be looking at the circulation and the components around that. We're not actually the ones who are going to be designing and building that. That's out of another department, but we'll want to make sure to coordinate with them, because timing wise, I think we are probably going to have a draft specific plan as they continue to do their studies and their contracting for the library. But I think ultimately we will have a plan in place probably around the time that they're sort of moving forward with the library.
Yeah, because it looked like your plan is, we'd have a specific plan by going to the county at the beginning of next year, basically a year from now. So we got a lot of work in the next year to get through the plan, but you're proposing in the first quarter of 2022 for the plan to be there. But I would think that's just about halfway through with any plan relative to the library. But I appreciate that.
Yeah. So we got a question about, let's see, with the future vision, are there plans to bring back the Casa de Oro Fall Festival Parade? And then there are also questions about, does a specific plan allow for cultural expression or arts, events, gathering places? Does anybody want to tackle that one first? And not tackle it, just.
I can take an early shot. I would suggest this. I would hope so. Part of what really makes a community is a place and a space where community function and community gathering happen. Yeah, we used to have the parade. I remember that, and the fall festival with the carnival at Santa Sophia and that. So the idea behind a specific plan is to really reinvent the place to increase its vibrance and its value and usefulness to us as residents. So the fact is, we will in fact go down there. It will be set up with nice spaces that will help us facilitate things like festivals and other types of street events. So I would be very, very hopeful that that's where we're headed back.
And I don't know whether the specific plan necessarily causes that to fall, a parade to happen, but I think it might create an environment. And I know that the Casa de Oro Alliance is committed to helping the business community get more organized together so that maybe that they want to do a parade or some other marketing events that could promote Casa de Oro as a destination again.
The one thing I would add is it actually could be something that's spelled out in the specific plan that those events are allowed. I mean, it wouldn't be the county hosting those, but one of the checks, if you go get a permit for something like that, is it allowed? And so it should be something that's at least clear that it is allowed in the specific plan.
That's a good point, Eric.
And also, adding on to that, I'm sorry, I've been waiting patiently. Adding on to that, county staff, I wonder if you might be able to provide any insight or the language of the guiding principles. That's something that we've been discussing with the county, is what are the guiding principles for this specific plan. And as I recall, the culture was absolutely mentioned, and recreation was absolutely mentioned. So I would definitely state that the county is, attempting to incorporate those concepts into their future plan. And I would defer to staff on exact language beyond that.
Mm-hmm. Ed.
And just to kind of cap all that off, back in that slide I had about public realm design guidelines, you'll see the topics in there, things like public art, cultural elements. So the specific plan actually has a overt component that talks about those types of features and how they would be integrated in Casa de Oro.
Fantastic. Roy.
Yeah, the specific plan, I believe, can also have language that stipulates that street fairs should not have the kind of obstacles we're currently dealing with enforcement and traffic, and that there could be something in the specific plan about once a year there's going to be a weekend street fair, partial closure of Campo Road, and we can get our fall fair onto Campo Road instead of on the campus of the charter school. That'd be a great thing.
Mm-hmm. Good point. Anybody else want to jump in on that one?
I want to just comment, Roy, that is a really good point. And I know that other community organizations are a little bit more challenged with some new policies that have come forward from the county over the last 1 to 2 years when it comes to event management. So perhaps that's something that we can circle back with county staff. And get some insight from GMIA. I know in particular has had some challenges with community events. So if there's a way that in the specific plan process we can try to remedy that, I know that would be beneficial to Casa de Oro.
Very good. Good point, Wendy. Thank you. So I've got another question that came in off of our chat. They want to know, do current property owners have to comply to the future Casa de Oro specific plan? It's a big question, but what happens with conflicting current versus future goals?
So I think this is me. So the specific plan would really outline that. Generally how it works is that the property owners are allowed to continue their uses in what we call, it's a technical term, but a legal non-conforming. The more conventional term is grandfathered in. And so that's sort of it. And the idea is that over time, as investment happens, as they conform to the new standards, then they bring into conformance with the specific plan. So there's a lot of standards in our existing zoning ordinance that we use as our guide to do that, and then encourage investment and change over time with our projects. And some of the property owners are probably in some form of non-conforming today in the current situation. And so we can help that with clearer guidelines and clearer transparency of what is allowed.
Mhm.
For example, all of the parking that's in front of Sarita's and the pawn shop and the old mining company bar, all of that parking uses the sidewalk as part of their parking, which when it's redeveloped into this per the specific plan, that would change and would cause some modification of the building footprint to come into compliance. But some of that parking may now be able to go onto the street and not even be required on the property in an effort to give some of these small lots a waiver or an opportunity to redevelop, but get some benefit from the county by using their land for parking.
Good point.
Mhm.
Yeah. Anybody else want to chime in?
I just think it's important to reference that once the specific plan is adopted, it does not mean that if someone is non-conforming, that they are suddenly subject to a code compliance issue. And county staff, I see Eric shaking his head yes. I think that's important to point out. The plan will then be the guide and requirement to follow, but following that requirement is triggered by a application process or a permit process of some kind. So it's not that suddenly, there are going to be 50 code enforcement officers out inspecting parcels for where something does not conform. But it could certainly be viewed as an opportunity to find ways to come into conformance when people are considering permit applications and changes to their property.
Right. There's a question, what can we expect to see in regards to our parks and community areas?
Well, we have Estrella Park is currently being constructed, which has been a big go-to, a big green light, which is great. In terms of park space down on Campo Road, that is to be determined. We have to work with somebody, some private landowner most likely, to carve out some space, or the county decides that the road doesn't need to be that wide. And if not park space, maybe we get a landscape median down the middle of that 5th lane, something like that, some gathering space.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Roy. Ed.
Yeah, correct. And again, go back to that graphic I showed. These plans typically have a public amenities component, an overt plan that shows a diagram. And I know there has been quite a bit of public input that the Alliance and I think the county and MBI have received independently about people's desire to have some form of public gathering, recreation, some other kind of usable public space, somewhere down in the core. So, and I'd agree with Roy, how that is proposed to take shape does in fact need to get spelled out in the specific plan. And so keep an eye out for that program and react to it.
Inevitably, though, will be some public space associated with the new library property.
Yeah.
Right. I've got a question. Would a coherent architecture be too much to ask for in a specific plan?
I'll take
Roy,
that.
You're the architect. What do you think?
Yeah, no, it's not too much to ask for. The design guidelines as part of the specific plan will establish various recommended building forms, coverings, claddings, roof shapes, mandatory even shade elements. Let's face it, we live in a hot, sunny environment. Development has occurred over many decades without much oversight until the early 80s, when the Casa de Oro planning group was established by the county. But with this specific plan, future development will be encouraged to adhere to an architectural language or style that reinforces a new quality of life on Campo Road.
Any other
Beautiful.
want to chime in? That was great.
Oh, there we go.
Okay, we've got a couple of questions related to, we mentioned a little bit, talk of a potential divider on Campo Road for traffic that I think we've addressed.
Yeah, I mean, that's I'm not muted. Yeah,
Yeah, no, go ahead.
that's certainly the type of thing we're going to be looking at in those options for Campo Road. So we would call it a raised and landscape median, and that's certainly an option that we're going to be looking at as we look at a number of components.
Okay, perfect. Here's a question for you guys. With a specific plan, is there a way to get rid of those colored LED lights on buildings? Ed, do you want to?
Sure, I can take a shot, and I'm sure Roy or Eric this would be near and dear to their heart as well. But the short answer is yes. And the county currently has, we don't have design guidelines, but the county has a sign ordinance in other building standards. So certain types of appurtenances on buildings, lights, signage on the roof, things that flash. There's quite a bit of regulation in terms of not only aesthetics, but safety on Campo Road, let's say, so you're not distracting drivers, etc. So the county code would have to opine whether, the county's code today allows lighting of buildings with those LED strips like we're seeing, or not, or if it can be done limited. The specific plan has an opportunity certainly to speak to that in terms of how we would like to manage that in Casa de Oro.
Yeah, I would just say, I mean, the specific plan is going to include and regulate the signage as well. That's a main component of any of our either specific plans or form-based codes that we have in the county. And so that'll work in conjunction with our zoning ordinance that regulates signs, and then ultimately our lighting ordinance as well that does regulate sort of the lighting on facilities. So it can bring it all together.
Excellent. Any other comments or thoughts or perspective you want to share? Okay, we've got, I'm looking at our time. I think we have time for a few more questions. And one is, would a specific plan allow us to keep any types of businesses off of Campo Road or limit the number of certain types of businesses? And then there's another text that, or a chat that, that talked about encouraging certain kinds of businesses. And yeah, so
this specific plan will include what uses are allowed, and it'll include, it's if you look at our zoning ordinance today, there's a number of tables that show it. We want to make it more simple in the specific plan so people can understand it, but it'll include what areas and what zones exist and what uses are allowed, either what we call by right, so it doesn't require additional discretionary permitting, or what might require different types of permitting to go in. So it can do that. It gets trickier when we're talking about individual types and limiting the number of them. And those are things that we would need to work out in the details of the specific plan. But generally that is what it will include and what it will have.
Okay.
I mean, we have a limited geography here, and we only need so many types of businesses. And I saw Ed's list of when he put up the list of all the business types that were there, and there were quite a number of them that we may or may not want. But there was also the issue in my mind that says, well, how do we make sure that we have a vibrant business community? We don't want to necessarily limit ourselves to opportunities, and there might be businesses that come about that we don't even know about right now in 10 or 15 years that are completely new businesses that we haven't even considered. So how do we keep ourselves open, but also protect ourselves from a saturation, I think is kind of the question.
Yeah, and I think part of it is making sure you have enough clarity of what's allowed and then some flexibility. I went to a conference and we were looking at codes and it had typewriter repair listed in a use. And you don't need to list everything in there. You don't need to restrict yourself to that, because who knows what the new businesses are going to be in the future.
Buggy whips.
Typewriter repair. I did find my brother's keyboard. It runs on batteries.
I do think, Michael, that your phrase saturation is a really important one. It's something that we see, as you know, in the planning group, from the planning group side of things, as we are reviewing requests for alcohol licenses or other types of permits or projects that come forward. And from the planning group perspective, we are very concerned about the saturation of specific types of businesses. And so it would be our goal from the planning group side of things that we avoid a saturation of specific types of businesses, that we see more variety, more compatibility, businesses that aren't deemed as nuisance uses for surrounding or existing kind of institutional property types like the church and the schools that have been there for decades and decades. We would strive for harmony in land uses beyond just kind of checking the box of being compatible from a land use perspective. We would strive for more harmonious neighborly uses.
Mhm. And the Campo Road corridor is a little bit of an anomaly with the Alcohol Bureau Control Board, in that there is a boundary through the ABC that goes right down the center of Campo Road, such that the south side of Campo Road can have a certain number of alcohol licenses, and the north side of Campo Road can have the same amount. And that is a very peculiar situation. Consequently, Campo Road over the years was saturated with off alcohol sales, and the Casa de Oro Alliance is trying to work with the ABC to get that resolved.
Well, Ed, maybe you can talk about that a little bit. The financials of this whole deal is, right now we have basically businesses that make a whole lot of money off of alcohol, and if you're not selling alcohol, you're not making money in a lot of places down there on Campo Road. But we're trying to put in these regulations that would allow business owners and property owners to reinvent themselves in a way that is shaped by community desires, so that they can get through the process quicker and easier without necessarily going to meetings and getting a big expense in the development process, going through the development process. It actually encourages the redevelopment. Could you maybe talk about some of the economics of changing land use and why that is what's going to drive the change?
You know, actually, what I'd like to do first, and I want to go back to where Wendy and to Eric left off, because it's really an important point to stress from the standpoint of business and property owners, because the specific plan is not something to fear. In fact, the plan is something that should actually represent your issues, your interest, your vision and desires. And so I want to strongly encourage all folks in our local business community, both business operators and owners, it's time to let's come forward and engage with the county, because they're, as Eric said, the plan's taking shape. When we adopt zoning, nobody's required to implement that overnight. No one's going to be shut down. Eric's already touched on that. And then, in fact, in terms of uses and regulating numbers or locations or things like that, you go back to Eric. You can't be arbitrary and capricious or do it based on, let's say, opinion or individual preference. When you're dealing with this, you really need to look at land use as a functional group. There has to be some equity and fairness, and you have to have a rationale. You can't go willy-nilly. Just in layman's terms, there are some requirements, legal requirements, and they're there for a very good reason. So I think if you look at that, and as Wendy said, maybe you have a context of other land uses, so the location of certain types of risk-related uses, you might not want to put them right across the street, allow them right across the street from the school, say. Rough example, but so we really do need to be detail considerate. So just property owners, please know that. And again, this is why we engage in these kind of processes for a specific plan.
Okay, somebody said about architecture, what types of styles and themes have been discussed that might blend in with the history and vibe of the area, or what's the vibe that the team is going for? I'm looking at our time. I wanted to honor that the person who posted that question, to let them know that we, the team, are not making those decisions, that in future opportunities for community input that I'll let Eric end with, that's our opportunity as members of the community to talk about what kind of a vibe we want to achieve and architecture. Unless, I know Wendy, you've got background in historic environments and things like that. If you wanted to to chime in and just, talk briefly about that?
Is there any part of Casa de Oro you want to keep?
We want to designate.
Yeah.
Well, I would just say that this is, preparing a specific plan is an aspirational process. And certainly the consultants working on the report and county staff and, everyone on this panel has some experience in this process. And looking at the history of the area, identifying if there are any specific historical attributes or architectural qualities that one would want to retain is always something to consider. I think what's more important is that we have this great opportunity with Campo Road to try to bring back kind of traditional town planning, but also make sure that it's forward-looking. That, and again, I don't want to step on the county's toes here. We have county staff with us tonight. But we want it to be forward-looking so that we're not limiting ourselves with the plan. So we want to be prepared for perhaps all types of building forms or heights, depending on what type of height limit comes into play. And that's really going to inform this specific architectural aesthetic applied to the buildings. The existing parking lot configuration with the building set back so deeply. Are we talking about essentially facade improvement, or are we talking about new construction in the future? Those are all things that applicants will need to respond to, and that the specific plan ultimately will provide guidance on. So I can't speak to a specific style of architecture that's applied to the front facades, but I do think overall we have such a great opportunity to take Campo Road and kind of return it or make it something it should have been in the past. And we're going to do that with this specific plan process with, road improvements and sidewalk and street tree improvements and providing guidance to property owners on what they can do with their existing building. Or what they can do if they were to, replace that entirely with something new. So I would just say it's aspirational and there's a lot of opportunity here. And for members of the public who want to be involved, they should definitely be reaching out to county staff at the contact information provided. And even if, somebody has some great looking building and say, this is so aspirational to me, I would actually provide that level of information to the county. Because they will intake it all and try to work it through the process.
I imagine that Eric will have something to say about upcoming workshops, but I imagine that one of those is going to be about design guidelines and architecture on the street. Is that most likely, Eric?
Yes, absolutely. And I'd say our next workshop is the first step of that, because we're going to be showing sort of drawings and graphics and talking exactly about what all of you have been talking about, and building upon that is what are the types of buildings, what are the forms, where should they be located, what are the preferences there, so that we can begin to design around that. And so, yeah, it's a very critical time to be involved in it. We really want input because we live in the county, but we don't live in Casa de Oro. We're not designing this for us. We're designing it for the community, property owners, and residents.
Mm-hmm. So we've all seen these big I-8 signs now emboldened right on the freeway at the old Stardust Golf Course, going out to the coast on the 8. Big, huge, freeway emblems right down at the pavement level. Let's not forget that Campo Road was the I-94 that went out to Yuma. That was the only way out of town for a long time. It might be fun to bring some of that, that old history back down to street level. Old I-94. Here we go. That'd be great.
I like that idea.
Yeah.
That's the way to honor the history, I would think.
Yeah, it's so cool.
Right? Like our own Route 66, but
yeah,
not,
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So I'm conscious of our time. It's 10 minutes after 7. So I'm going to wrap this up. Before Eric, Eric, go ahead. Let our folks know, the folks that are watching, how citizens can stay aware of and meaningfully participate in specific plan work. There were a lot of great ideas in the chat. The Oxbow Inn, great memories and things like that. So let us know, like, what's next. what do we do? What we, the people who live in our area, what we can do.
Sure. So I encourage everybody to sign up to receive our emails, as well as to look at our website. You can email Josh Minville. We're also sharing in the Zoom the chat, but it's in the Facebook chat now. And so sign up, reach out to us if you have questions, if you want to make sure you've got the list. Like I said, we're going to be working on an announcement, but we're tentatively looking at December 17th for our next virtual workshop, so that we can begin that next step.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. There was a question. Somebody said, how do I get involved in the Alliance? Well, we would love for you to be involved. And the email address I know of that's an Alliance email address is for our media and outreach, public information and outreach. I'm going to ask you, if you want to get involved and have somebody email you back, send an email to CDOA Media. So Casa de Oro Alliance, CDOA Media @gmail.com. CDOA Media @gmail.com, and let us know that you want to get involved, and we will get right back with you. But in the meantime, you can always stay apprised about what's going on our website. I'm going to let Michael close us out, and he can tell you when our Alliance General Assemblies are. But before we do that, does anybody have any last parting words or comments or thoughts that you want to put out there? I'm gonna call on people, and if you do, talk. If you don't say anything, and I'll go on to the next person. So Wendy, do you have any parting thoughts or words or any comments that you'd like to share to close
well,
out?
Beyond my aspirational discussion from a few minutes ago, I would just like to say that for any members of the public watching, if you are interested in learning more about the Valle de Oro Community Planning Group, do we have a link we can share, or can we put that in the chat as well? So the planning group serves as the advisory body to the County of San Diego, and ultimately the specific plan will come forward to the County Planning Group, the Valle de Oro Community Planning Group, to provide recommendations. So that's always another opportunity for public involvement as the plan progresses.
Terrific. Michael, you're next on my screen. Do you have any parting words or comments?
Beyond the other parting words, I'll pass to the end.
Beyond.
Yeah. Why don't we
Okay.
just go ahead?
All right. Okay.
Well, I'm encouraged that with the specific plan developing, that the 7,000 households that live above Casa de Oro, live above Campo Road, feel encouraged again to come down and spend their discretionary income in their grocery shopping, and we'll get a tailor shop, and we'll get a bike shop back there. We'll get a village going again down on Campo Road, and we really will have a village center again. And I'm very encouraged that will happen.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Ed.
Thanks. I've had an opportunity to participate in a few of these in my career, and it's my message will be, we are in this together. And frankly, it really isn't the Alliance that's trying to do something of its own vision that would be different than the community or property owners or the county trying to have that same kind of isolated role. Fact of the matter is, it's an opportunity, for us to work together and discuss our mutual interest in issues, and then work with the county to develop these solutions in the plan. So I can't stress that enough. It's really important we just kind of join hands. And you may not see eye to eye on everything, but that doesn't mean you can't walk hand in hand.
Great.
Yes, good point. And Eric, any parting words or thoughts or comments?
Yeah, I mean, I think I already added them. I just echo everybody else. I think I've used the word excited a lot, but we're happy to be moving forward with this, and we want engagement. We want to hear from you on the future of this community.
Great. So I have 3 parting words before I turn this over to Michael to close out our assembly. My first parting word is thank you, panel. Amazing expertise. Wow. I'm echoing what one of the viewers commented. I'm impressed and grateful for the expertise involved in this alliance. Wow, we definitely hit the jackpot with this panel. She put the words in my mouth. Thank you, Valerie, for typing that. So thank you all for being here. Thank you, Dustin Bennett, for pulling our tech together and making this look amazing. We appreciate you behind the scenes doing that. I lied. I have 4. Third is happy birthday, Roy. I'm going to embarrass you. Today is your birthday and you spent it with us. Oh my gosh.
I did.
Yeah. Yes, you did.
Thanks.
So awesome.
Birthday, Roy.
And then my last parting words are support our local businesses in Casa de Oro. Really think about, and if you are not familiar with all the businesses, really the next time you're in Casa de Oro, really pay attention to who's there and say hello to them, take advantage of them, help patronize them, help keep them in business, especially pandemic or not. That's my parting words is there. So Michael.
Wendy, did you have something?
No, I just gave that a thumbs up. I think that's a great reminder for us to make sure that we're supporting our local businesses.
Absolutely.
Right.
I just want to
Okay,
say
Michael.
thank you to Lisa, my co-chair on the Government Affairs Committee, and you did a great job. And it was a great choice of me picking you to be our hostess or MC, however you'd like to say it. But you did a great job, and I appreciate it. And I appreciate all of the people who attended this event tonight. The county, Eric, you did a great job, and I really appreciate it. And Wendy, I know that it was hard for you to get all together, and we appreciate you attending and being a part of this conversation. As far as the Casa de Oro Alliance, we're coming on to the holidays, and we want to say happy holidays and be safe during the holiday season. Take care of each other, and let's get on to the other side of the new year with our planning for this specific plan. It's really going to start cooking up. But before Christmas, it sounds like we might have another opportunity on December 17th. So put it in your calendar now. It's not written in stone yet, but that's kind of the target, I guess. And then we'll be having another General Assembly meeting on January 21st. We generally have them on the 3rd Thursday of the month. And we're trying to make it so that if you can't attend, you can still see us online afterwards. So take a look and see what we're talking about. I don't know, but Ed, I might try and recruit you to talk about our new project in more detail during that General Assembly, so that people can get more of an idea of what's going on. But we haven't picked out a theme. If anybody has a suggestion for a theme for next General Assembly, we can certainly entertain it, and we'd appreciate your ideas. Finally, tell your friends, if you're watching this and you're interested, tell your friends that you're interested. They might be interested too, and they might not know about us. So spread the word in your community and among your friends and neighbors. And in terms of being involved, there's lots of opportunities. Maybe we can spend some time just talking about different opportunities for people to volunteer during our next General Assembly. Okay? Thank you very much, everyone. I think that's it. Dusty,
All right.
anything else? Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
Good night, all.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.